And welcome back to the WRPF podcast. I'm your host, Alex Uslar. Episode 6. Here I got my boy, Blake Lehew. All right. So if you guys listen to last week's episode, I had a high-level competitor slash business owner who has, under 30, but has been competing for a very long time. Well, holy shit. Blake completely sweeps Chris's kind of history in powerlifting. Blake has been powerlifting since he was 14 years old, competing in powerlifting since he was 14 years old. All right. He's still under 30 himself. Been competing for a super, super long time. I looked at his open powerlifting history. Holy crap, it's crazy. It's extensive. So we're going to dive into a similar episode to last week's where we kind of hear Blake's evolution of powerlifting, what got him into powerlifting, what got him to be, a top 5 male of all time like he is today. And also, Blake is a business owner. He owns a gym. All right. He works for the WRPF as the state chair. He runs meets. So again, very similar position to myself, Chris Bridgeford. I'm excited to hear another take because Blake, if you guys listen to last week's episode, we talked about how Chris has kind of taken a back seat from competing at a high level due to being a business owner. Well, Blake has still been performing at an insanely high level. So Blake, super excited to jump into things. That was my long-winded intro. Welcome, and thank you for hopping on.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So all those different things we're going to cover, all those different things we're going to talk about. Tell me, let's start from the beginning. Who's Blake Lehew? Where were you born? What day were you born? Not really, not all those details. But let's talk about your athletic history. What got you to the sport of powerlifting?
I played football for 9 years. Being in Texas, like high school football is the end all be all here. At 9 years, so I started my first grade playing Pee Wee football. And then by the time I was a freshman in high school, I realized, hey, I'm not getting any bigger. I've been 5'5" since I was 14 years old. So it was very obvious that football was not the route for me, but I was always fairly athletic. And, as a freshman, I benched like 275. So everybody was like, hey, you got to join the powerlifting team. I'm like, what's that? They're like, well, you can compete by lifting weights. I'm like, that's a thing? So I did. I showed up for a competition as a 148. And the rest is really history.
Well, let me pause you right there before we get into the rest is history, because what you started with by saying you're from Texas right there, you have, and I want to hear about that history because you have the biggest upper hand. It's something about Texas that, first of all, builds you strong motherfuckers, but also just that state has had such a presence in powerlifting for so long. And still to this day, it has the highest membership base in the USAPL, all the high schools, all the colleges, which is something that's very unheard of in the majority of the other states in the United States, that in high school, they're teaching powerlifting and they're teaching it, for you to compete, and they're teaching it somewhat correctly, I'd say.
Well, it's actually, I actually wouldn't even say that being in high school powerlifting.
Fair.
It's more of just the sheer population. The pool is just bigger because high school football coaches, if their football players aren't playing baseball or basketball or doing track in the spring, they don't want their athletes sitting on their butt doing nothing in the spring. So you're either going to do a sport or you're going to do like powerlifting. Like you need to keep lifting.
Right.
And everybody just ends up in Texas high school powerlifting because they're playing other sports.
Right. So, I mean, obviously that's common in other sports, in other states. They put you in a weight room, they have you lift, right? You'll squat, you'll quarter squat or whatever it is. Most high school weight rooms you see, I mean, I've been in them. They're literally just like knee bending, looking, like they're going to be Snap City, but it's doing something, obviously. But so tell me what your experience more was like then. That freshman year, you finding powerlifting or them exposing you to powerlifting. formally in a competitive atmosphere since the school supported that. They are obviously teaching you things more to a standard. And, you know, my understanding is it's also, this was an era where it was pretty much single ply, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the THSPA, like, it's, if you want to be even remotely competitive, you have to do single ply. Like, you can lift raw, that's not an issue whatsoever, but it's pretty much just equipped lifting.
Right.
So if you're relatively strong and want to pursue it to any degree, like competitive degree, you got to invest in equipment.
Now, is that still the case to this day? For the most part, right? And that's why like, in the USAPL, it's like equipped lifting, even though most of the raw people are like, oh, come on, throw that shit out. I mean, they're still filling up, you know, there still are those athletes, and the majority of them are coming from Texas or universities or people who started in high school, right?
Yeah. I mean, and Wisconsin's actually got a lot of, like, a pretty big equipped scene as well. Like, their high school powerlifting association is pretty solid as well.
Interesting. Okay, so take me back. Let's rewind again now. So we got the Texas out of the way, all right? Texas boy. So high school, you're realizing football, you're getting in, you know, with the big leagues here. Maybe that's not the best route. You had already been lifting. You knew what a squat, bench, deadlift was. What was the? How were you exposed to it as a sport? Do you remember how it was explained to you? Your first experience going to a competition, or was it your first experience competing at a competition?
No, that my first time competing was my first time seeing the sport at all. I'd never heard of it. I knew nothing. I didn't even understand really the weight classes. I showed up and I weighed in at like 148.8. And I remember the guy telling me, I'm not going to screw you on half a pound and just let me lift as a 148.
Nice.
So, yeah. And I don't even remember what I placed at that competition. I wasn't super competitive as a 148. I think I was lucky enough to just qualify for state my sophomore year as a 148. I got next to last. I had a perfect day and went next to last.
Now, was that was age wise, age and weight class wise?
No, it's just weight class.
Okay, gotcha.
There's no age divisions if you're competing.
It was this high school you're competing with, whether it was the seniors or whatever it was, and you were a freshman.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So, I mean, obviously, we know now, especially because they have the more specific age classes. That makes a big difference. You're 14 years old, you started lifting. Of course, you're going to place last next to the 17, 18-year-olds that are still in high school.
Sure. Well, not to mention my equipment. I mean, I knew nothing. I didn't understand. The equipment that I had was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I mean, we were under the impression with knee wraps that, like, in order so we didn't have to sit in the wraps too long, we had two different people wrapping our knees.
Sick. Oh man.
We knew nothing about any of this.
That's crazy. That's definitely a sight that if you saw that at a meet now, everyone would be like, what the hell?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Looking back, I'm like, how did I not tear something? How did I not?
You were doing like single leg Bulgarian split squats on the platform. One's tight as hell, one's loose.
So many times that happened. One guy actually knows what he's doing, and the other one has no idea.
Right. So take me through those first couple years then. So sophomore year, still weren't doing as great. Did you start increasing your body weight? What kind of changed?
So I remember sophomore year, I got second place at regionals. So the way it works is if you get top 2 at regionals or hit a certain total based on your weight class, you can qualify for state. And so I managed to get second place at regionals, thus earning my spot at state. And in order to maintain the weight class, I remember the week before state, I had 800 calories a day for 7 days before the meet to maintain. And I was 148.4.
And you were how old at this point?
15.
I'll tell you what, man, I feel like, you know, a typical 15-year-old, if they're playing just, you know, high school football or whatever, you're only a sophomore, you're taking it seriously, but like that requires right there a next level amount of discipline. That's pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah. I distinctly remember the drive to state. My coach stopped at the gas station. He's eating some like hot Cheetos or something, and I'm just smelling it and just drooling. Like it was the worst thing ever. But I
And
made it.
and those are 2 hour weigh-ins at the time, yeah?
Regionals and state were not. So normal local meets are 2 hour weigh-ins. But regionals and state, you actually got 24-hour weigh-ins.
Interesting. And this is what federation was this? This was just Texas High School.
Yep, THSPA.
And is that still active as an organization in and of itself?
Yes, it's still booming.
Oh wow. Okay. And so that's kind of like the kids segue into the USAPL and then competing at the higher national level, I'd assume.
Yes and no. I mean, it kind of opens people's eyes to the sport of powerlifting, and then if they go to college and their team just happens to have, or their college tip, like if they have a team, then they'll go there. But THSPA actually has no affiliation with any other organization.
Interesting. So they have their own then set of rules where, like you said, on a small level, it's 2 hours. Then it flips to 24 hour. Okay. And is stiff bar across the board?
Yes.
Pound plates?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I feel like that's something, if you don't live in Texas, like you're going to hear that acronym, you're going to be like, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah. Well,
But it's huge. But it's huge.
And what's funny is I think there was a statistic that came out like 3 years ago or so that at that time, the THSPA alone was the largest powerlifting federation in existence based on number of registered lifters.
It's overall history.
Well, and that's just the boys.
Wow.
The women's is their own organization, THWSPA. And I believe at that time, again, if you combined them, it was larger than every other organization combined in the States.
That's nuts.
It really is.
Wow. Okay, so sophomore year, you're making some progress. Where does that continue to lead you then from there through junior high school?
I decided my junior year that 800 calories a day for a week was not the way to go, and it was time to gain some weight. So I did that, and then same thing, went to regionals, actually got some better equipment that year. I think I got second place at regionals again, but I placed sixth at state. So a little bit better from ninth to sixth. And then my senior year, I finally learned how to use the better equipment that I'd gotten, and obviously just got a little bit stronger a year later, and was able to win my senior year.
Yeah, I mean, I see it here alone. By the time you were 17, you were already squatting well over 500 pounds. Obviously it's in single ply, but still, as a 17-year-old barely weighing $165, that was pretty competitive, yeah?
Yeah. I guess I'd forgotten by that point, and I had started lifting in the APF as well.
Okay.
So I did their like nationals, and I think I even did their worlds my senior year.
So then take me into when you're 18. That's when you started finding the USAPL?
I went to college. So I was always been young for my grade.
Okay.
So I turned 18 2 weeks before I moved into my first apartment in college.
Whoa, sick.
So, and that was, God, that first year in college was rough. I thought I was, hot stuff coming in, winning state my senior year, and then just get carried away, partying, doing college kid things, not really caring. I think I got up to like 175 body weight and thought that I could cut all that for collegiate nationals. And I did. I cut the weight just fine, but then none of my equipment fit.
Ooh, okay.
Stapled with my bench opener 3 times and bombed. And all I had to do was total, and I would have gotten second place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that
big eye opener, big learning lessons there. So that's very interesting. That's something that I've never really thought of. And again, the world of single ply is kind of unknown to me. So when you're a single ply lifter and you cut weight, do you have usually different pieces of equipment, or do you just you stay true to your weight class all year round?
Some people that are more advanced and more comfortable or competent, I guess, with using equipment, they'll have different pieces of equipment in case one is too small or too big. I did not have that luxury. You know, bench shirts are $200 to $300 a pop. Like, I'm lucky to have one of everything I've got.
Right.
So when I bombed at collegiates that year, it lit a fire under my ass, and I got it together. My body weight didn't get above like 168. Weight cuts were no more than 5 pounds, and managed to win collegiate nationals the next year, and then the 2 years following.
Yeah, so this is crazy. This first collegiate nationals you're referring to, this is 2014. So this was now we already covered a ton of history beforehand. Now we're getting into 2014. We're still at this time to the outside world. Powerlifting was the farthest thing from mainstream or a household name. I had the same conversation with Chris. It's like you went to a regular gym, people didn't know what the word powerlifting means. Now even normies have an idea. They kind of know what you're talking about. But even at this point, 2014, you were already head first diving in, already 4 or 5 years deep into it.
Yeah, I think by that point in time, I'd probably done well over 20 competitions. I was doing 4 to 6 competitions a year, every year in high school.
Wow. So what did that look like from like a training perspective? That's something also that I'm curious about. Were you just kind of lifting heavy all year round? Were you looking for actual progress, or it was just do what you can do?
Oh God, it was so bad. It was your stereotypical high school BS, max out every time you go to the gym and the equipment that you've got. And
it's like when you're 15, 16 years old, your body can handle it, right?
it was. So you think I did 3 competitions, 3 weekends in a row.
Nice.
And after that third one, it's one of my favorite stories. I distinctly remember we actually got home from that third one really early. Like I was home by 5 o'clock. So they'd already done awards and we had an hour drive home. Like I was home by 5. And I'm like, man, I'm going to take a nap before I eat dinner. So I go take a nap and I wake up and it's 9 o'clock. My parents were already in bed. And I'm like, you know what? The lights are already off. I'm just going to roll over and go back to sleep. And I wake up at 3 o'clock the next afternoon. I slept for 22 hours straight, more or less.
Nice.
After competition, my body was tired of me.
Oh man. So take me into college. What did you major in college?
Kinesiology.
Okay. So you knew you loved exercise at this point. You knew you wanted to do something with your career regarding this.
Yes, absolutely.
So you continued competing all throughout college in the USAPL, still in single ply.
Yes. By my junior year, I think I started doing raw. It's either sophomore or junior year. I can't remember which one I started.
So take me through that. 2015, it looks like you competed the first time raw. At this point now, 2015, I like to say usually 2014, 2015 was somewhat the turning point for powerlifting. Social media is now readily available, right? People are seeing people on social media. At this point, were you looking at some of these lifters? Like what lifters were you looking up to lifters at this point? Who were you like kind of idolizing in powerlifting? Were you watching West Side at this point now, 2015? Obviously, we're seeing some of these guys like Dan Green and stuff like that. Eric Lillibridge, all these other crazy mutants. Who were you looking at?
You know what's funny is I really had no idea who those people were at the time. Like I wasn't exposed to all of that. The thing that actually got me into raw lifting was, I don't know if you remember a guy by the name of Josh Hancock.
Sounds familiar.
So he won junior worlds at 163 like the previous year. And he was just one of those guys that really liked to run his mouth, and he was just super cocky, and I just really wasn't a fan. And I'm looking at his numbers and I'm like, I've never done a raw meet and I'm within 100 pounds of his total right now. Like, it's like I could shut this guy up.
Right.
So I every fall the powerlifting team would do a meet to qualify, to get a total on the board to qualify for collegiate nationals. Well, I decided I was already qualified, or I realized that I could just qualify raw. Like I was strong enough at the time.
The numbers.
Yeah. So I show up handling 4 other people at the same time, 2 of which are in my weight class equipped. And so I show up to this meet lifting raw. I wrap a guy who's on my team, give him a wrap. He goes up and squats. I start putting my belt and wrist straps on while he's going up to squat. And then I go and squat after him, go turn in my attempt, and then haul ass back so that I can wrap another guy that's lifting after me. And that was my first raw meet ever.
So this is already, you setting this foundation is going to also be very pivotal for when we talk about the later conversation of how managing now, being a coach, a business owner, competing at a high level. You had this foundationally ingrained extremely early on, where it's like, what I talked about with, I've talked about with some people is like, for some people to compete at a high level, you have to be very selfish, but it's like, it was always such a team atmosphere. Although it, like, for most people, powerlifting is not a team sport. And for many years it wasn't a team sport, but for you, it so was, because those high school days being ingrained in. So it's like, you're all a team, everyone's looking out for everyone, and you're literally wrapping people's knees before your attempt. That's insane and unheard of.
Well, that, and like, I'd never done a raw meet before. And so like the stress of doing something raw when I only know equipped, I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. It was kind of a joke to me.
Right.
Because equipment, you have to warm up raw, then you have to into your suit, and then you have to warm up in your suit in the same amount of time that raw lifters just warm up.
Right.
So for me, warming up, I'm just like cutting up, BSing in the back, and people are like, Blake, what are you doing? I'm like, I'll be fine. And it was fine. I wasn't stressed at all.
So how was that first raw performance at Raw Nationals? Where did that kind of rank you? Where did that leave you?
I got second in the open class only to Taylor Atwood at the time, and really I was only like 60, 70 pounds behind him on the total. I won my class as a junior. And of course, like, no one had ever really heard of me. Raw Nationals was my second raw meet ever.
Right.
And then was able to claim my spot on the world team to go beat Josh Hancock. Well, in 6 weeks out from the meet, he pulls out.
Nice.
Yeah. And then he made this big YouTube video about comparing himself to, I think the hockey players like Wayne Gretzky or something like that.
Okay.
Not big on hockey, but like some like hockey legend, and he was comparing him to him, and he was retired. He was retiring from the sport of powerlifting because he achieved the height of his junior worlds was the height of his powerlifting career.
So he's in his early 20s and he's already retiring.
Yeah.
Nice. And just to get ahead of ourselves a little bit, did that stay the case?
Yeah, no one's.
Wow. Interesting.
I was pretty salty about that, not gonna lie, because I went on to win Raw Worlds that year, but it didn't mean as much because
you didn't have that head to head. You couldn't, shut down his shit talking. He thinks he was already a legend and already did it.
Yeah, well, and I'm a competitor regardless. Like, I want to go to a meet just to swing for the fences to beat people. Like, that's just what I like to do.
So you said that was Junior Worlds or Open Worlds?
That was Junior Worlds.
Okay. Cool. So looking through your journey, you still kept competing kind of raw and single ply going back and forth, right? Because that was your roots. That's what you knew.
Yeah.
So take me through those next couple years still in the USAPL, kind of climbing the ranks, so to speak.
Well, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, I won collegiate nationals the next 3 years. So sophomore through senior year, I won out. And that earned me, every time I won collegiate nationals, that earned me a spot on the equipped world team. So I didn't really have to do any local meets anymore because I was just perpetually qualified for everything. And so what I would do is I would do equipped worlds the first week of school, which was like late August, early September. And then 3 to 4 weeks later, I would go do Raw Nationals. But because I had just done an equip meet and, was pushing mid-high sixes on squat, 500 pounds on bench, going to a Raw meet where I'm squatting 550 to 560, it felt like nothing on my back. Like I wasn't tired. It was really easy, a really, really easy transition because the weights felt negligible. So doing it like that actually made it, I think that's actually part of what made me competing that often sustainable.
Right. So take me to 2018 junior worlds there. You totaled 735 raw, weighing in at 73.9. That was almost 10 times body weight total. Where did that leave you? Because I was not as involved in the USAPL IPF around the 2017, 2018 time. I didn't hear about you until like the tribute meet the next year kind of era, right? So
Yeah.
where did that kind of leave you in rankings and stuff like that? And what made you want to switch to competing 24-hour weigh-ins, deadlift bar, which happened shortly after?
Yeah, it gets kind of tricky after that. There was some political BS that I just kind of got involved in between the USAPL. I want to say IPF, but they really weren't an issue at the time. I just kind of had some issues with the USAPL, and I wasn't treated fairly in a situation. And if we get into that, it'll be a 2.5-hour podcast. So
fair enough.
So I just decided that it was about like once I achieved pretty much everything I wanted to in the USAPL and IPF, that it was just time to move on. You know, every time I would go to Worlds, it was $3,000 to $5,000 a trip, which is
and you're not winning money by winning it.
Exactly. You're paying money just for the glory. And I was like, you know, like money is becoming a thing in the untested side. And so it just kind of seemed like the right call. Like it's time that the sport kind of started giving back a little bit. You know, I wanted to take advantage of those opportunities. So I did the pro deadlift at the Arnold, which was like one of the things I'd always wanted to do because it was on the main stage at the Arnold in the expo center.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and I think I got like the second biggest deadlift of the day, and then I won overall on coefficient. So that was cool. Got enough money to pay for my trip there, and I think that was 2019. If you've got Open Powerlifting pulled up right now,
2019.
Yeah, and
then I remember that that was one of the last great Arnolds. So it was the last great Arnold. What the hell am I saying?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, man. Mm-hmm. That still had the cage and everything inside of it. Yeah, because then 2020 shut down, and now it's a shell of its former self. But yeah, I remember that because we had a hybrid booth right across from the cage, and the main stage was just slightly down that aisle from where the cage was, and that was for that tested side. That was like the peak, getting to do one of those exhibitions or competing in the things that were on that stage. That was like insanely hype. Now I went last year, and it was like they still had that kind of stage off the side, and it just wasn't the same. Wasn't the same at all.
No, it's not. And they have other competitions, you know, in the USAPL, but they're all literally outside the main hall, which right. I did those, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't what I was looking for.
You wanted to be on that main stage because that's where it's not people seeking out powerlifting. That's where it's like just all the bystanders walking by, overflowing because you couldn't get through those aisles. Boom, here's a little bit of open space. Let's see what the hell's going on here.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times.
Oh, it really was. It really was. I mean, I like looking back, I'm glad that was my last meet because that was a really good memory. The Arnold was always a really good experience. But then after that, things like started really moving forward with my life. I got married a couple months later. And then a couple months after that, we moved to San Antonio. And then like 2 weeks after we moved to San Antonio, I competed at the Tribute, which was in San Antonio.
Right.
And then after that, this meet kind of went under the radar, but I actually did a meet in December after that. And I took Taylor Atwood's all-time total record.
Okay.
So there were still some things that I wanted to do, you know,
and I think that's around when I started first hearing about you because I think I might have seen you on the stream of the tribute meet, good old tribute meet where it was the first generation Ghost combo rack that they had to take off the platform. And I think around that same time, might have been in 2019, you came down to hybrid at one point. And I remember a bunch of like the kids at the gym were like, "Oh, that's Blake Lehew. He used this, that, and the other, and now he's competing at the truth." Everyone was like, "Oh man, okay, who is he?" And that's where you got put on my radar. Kind of see your social media. I'm like, "Oh man, this guy's strong as shit." And then we started seeing, a big evolution of strength as you start competing on the deadlift bar and stuff with the 24-hour weigh-ins, right? So you said you did that meet also in 2019. I know it was under the radar, but I remember hearing about that, and that stood, I think, until Raw Nationals 2020 or whatever it was when he took it back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, I think I came to hybrid. I was training for the Kern because I thought that was still going to happen,
Right.
which it got pushed back literally a whole year after that.
Right.
Long enough that I couldn't maintain 165 any longer because I'd been a
Gotcha.
160 decade at that point in time.
Right. And you were still always cutting all that time, but then now you're going up, going up, going up, trying to see how you could push the weight class, and then you made the decision to go to 181.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember I was consistently the last meet that I think it was actually been the bar. My body weight after like peak water load was 189.
Ooh.
And I flush all the way from 189 at peak water bloat down to 165. And that was like the dirtiest cut I've ever done. And I competed great.
Yeah.
I don't think I even got an IV for that competition.
24 hours. It was a big difference, big game changer.
Yeah.
For sure.
It was. I think I did one more meet after that. I think I bombed at the Pioneer, and that was just a rough time.
That was kind of your wake up call. Hey, it's time to go up. Stop doing these cuts. So then your first meet, that was the first showdown, I believe, right? That was during that 2020 during COVID. It was supposed to be in Buffalo, which who the fuck wanted to be in Buffalo to begin with? You know what I mean? Not that Kansas City was that much better, but I mean, I'm just used to because I ran Miami meets, bro. Everyone wants to come to Miami,
Yeah. Yeah. I really had no interest in going to New York, but I mean, it was understandable. Kansas City, there were no COVID restrictions, so they were actually going to let me meet.
Right.
So
exactly.
Show up, there's like 7 lifters there.
So that meet already in that time, I feel 2020 started giving you a bit more exposure. You were still like a light 181, started kind of getting put on the map, right? So where would you say is when you really broke out, started winning some money, and people knew what was up?
I don't know. I feel like the Kern was really the first meet where it was like, hey, I'm here to play.
Right.
Like, I'm on the scene. I'm like, granted, it was in wraps, so I did have an edge there, but the whole meet was supposed to be in wraps.
And this was your first meet that was raw with wraps. Wraps were nothing new to you, but now you're just using them in a new way.
Yes. That was the first time I'd ever done a classic raw meet. And I remember I ended up trying to pull to beat John Hack for 3rd overall, and my hand tore at the top.
I remember. I think I was judging deadlifts on that flight. That was overall a super fun meet. Everyone was so stoked to be there after COVID and shit. That was great.
No, it was such a fantastic meet. I hope we get to do it again.
Yep. Yeah, so I remember that was that battle back and forth, and your hand opened at the top, and then I think Dan also was trying to pull for a win. It was all three of you guys going back and forth, and that shit was crazy. That shit was hype, super hype.
Yeah, it was.
So that you have your first 600 plus dots performance there, and so that's where it was a pretty big turnaround, right?
Yeah, it was. And then I'm trying to think. I know I did other
that I remember that performance. You broke the all-time world record total, right? That was also the first 2K Cody had already hit 2K at 181, but you broke it.
Yes, that's correct.
It was two Kerns before that. I remember when Cody hit that 2K at 181. Everyone's like, "What the fuck? This is nuts."
It was the tribute. It was that tribute to 2019.
Oh,
the Raps Day Saturday and the Raw Day was on Sunday. So Cody Blazik set the 2K in Raps at 181, and everyone lost their mind. And then John comes in the next day and does it raw.
That's right. That's what it was. Yeah. Nuts.
Yeah. I know. I vividly remember that. That was that really, really stuck in my head. So I wanted to go for Blazix first and then go for John's.
Right. Which you successfully did.
Which I did. It took me about another year to do it, but yeah.
So that ultimately has been the last 2 years, right? Where it's kind of reaching for, you've been climbing the ranks for years and years and years now, but then you had this crazy breakout, and it's been kind of one all-time world record after the other and kind of pushing the envelope, right?
Yeah. And I genuinely don't feel like I'm anywhere near like my peak in the sport or even at this weight class. I did the Pioneer last month, and I went 4 for 9 and matched my best ever total.
Yeah. But you know what? Like, just to say something about that, because sometimes people they talk shit. They're like, oh, look, another 4 for 9 day, another 5 for 9 day. It's like, you still made progress or stayed the same. And you're at this level where it's not 9 for 9 staying in the pocket. You're trying to push the envelope as hard as fucking possible, win as much money as possible, set the bar as high as possible, where it's like, you got to take those risks, right? And I feel like you're one of those lifters where it's like, you've been doing that for a couple performances, but it's paid off for you in the sense of you've had a payday and you have more shots at getting whatever number you may be wanting to get. So that's something let's dive into that a little bit, kind of your philosophy behind your attempt selection, that sometimes people are like, whoa, look at that opener. He missed his opener. Oh, he came back for it. What's going through your head with all that? Obviously you have so many years that people might not even be aware of. They open the live stream and like, what the heck? This is crazy. You have so many years experience behind your belt. You have strategy going into it. You know what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, the Pioneer, I believe, was my 60th competition. So this year,
God, that is crazy. It's funny because I went and counted through Bridgeford's and it was like 20 or something when I opened yours. I'm like, I'm not counting this. What the hell?
Yeah, hopefully I can make it to 100 before I retire, but we'll see what happens there. Yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question? I got distracted in my own head.
Your attempt selection, going for those, those kind of YOLO crazy attempts, trying to push the envelope, but still making progress at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Not what would be textbook, right?
So something, and this is kind of this philosophy may be kind of counterculture in the powerlifting world, for lack of a better way of putting it. But second attempts are for the total, thirds are for fun. If I go 6 for 9, that's a positive day in my book.
Yeah.
So I train, and I base my training around what I want my second attempts to be.
Right.
And I base my third attempts based off of how the competition's going, what I genuinely think I have in the tank, even if that's just scratching the third in order to save it for another lift. So like my plan is to wing the third attempt every time, because I never know. You can have the best prep in the world and it all falls apart on meet day. And you can have the worst prep in the world and go 9 for 9, which was literally the high. I had been dealing with like severe knee pain. And like, I didn't think I was even going to be able to make it through the meet. And I go 8 for 9, effectively 9 for 9, because I made a 40-kilo jump from my second to third after missing my opener and got it. So like, I had a terrible prep. I only had like 6 weeks of prep to that meet and went bad, or it went really good.
Right.
And yeah, so I'll plan for training's going good. And then I go 4 for 9, 5 for 9, 6 for 9. So if I shoot for 6 for 9 and only get one attempt less, like I'm still doing all right in my books.
Right. And I can only assume like that kind of, when you're visualizing, you're going based off what you've hit in training, but then ultimately strategizing what of these second attempts are going to set me up for a really good total and dot score that I'm probably going to be in a good position. And then I push the envelope, as needed on the deadlift, your bread and butter, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know my third attempt deadlift, regardless, is gonna be a Hail Mary, but it happens so often that my deadlift overperforms training on meet day. I don't 100% understand why. I think it has something to do with the weight cut and then refeed. Like I'm just a little bit more tapered in at the waist and leverages are a little bit better, but I'm always stronger on deadlifts on meet day. So I'm expecting a Hail Mary third attempt, because if it's gonna be there, it's gonna be there on meet day.
Got you.
Like that guy, it'll be there on meet day, but at least it's not for squat depth, you know?
Right. Right. It doesn't matter. Dude, your deadlift is absolutely insane, right? It's like you've pushed the envelope on a deadlift for someone in a lighter weight class, like in an absolutely insane way. Kind of take me through. I'm also curious first of all your take on the two different deadlift bars as someone who's an overall total specialist, but also very much a deadlift specialist and can win a meet easily on that. Kind of what's your take on those two bars?
Two bar, like
Texas versus Kabuki.
Oh, Texas versus Kabuki. So I think that the Texas ends up being a little bit more reliable. You definitely get less out of it, but it's more consistent than the Kabuki. It's funny you bring this up, because I've definitely put a lot of mental energy into trying to figure out how these different bars work and why I have the problems that I have. And the Kabuki bar actually has, I don't know the verbiage they have on their website, but it has it's almost like a self-greasing bushing, and it spins almost as if it's a bearing bar. But
Right,
because
like an Olympic lifting bar or something, yeah.
And all their bars do that, and I don't know why they think it's a good thing, but for powerlifters, it's actually atrocious. It's why everybody bitches about the bars. Pardon my language. But so the Kabuki bar, everybody loses their balance forward.
Right. Because
when it flexes, it doesn't flex down. It flexes in a circle because it's spinning as it's moving. The Texas deadlift bar just flexes up and down. So it's a lot more predictable. You know what you're going to get with the timing. If something's moving in a circle, it's very hard to get that timing down, especially with the weights that I'm doing at such a small body weight.
Right.
Pulling, like approaching 5 times body weight, it's really hard for someone like me to stabilize. I mean, I've gained 30 pounds in the past year and a half, and I still have like a 31, 32-inch waist.
Right.
So stability in that regard has been kind of an issue in the past.
So ultimately, if someone was to go back to the drawing board, taking like the length and the bend abilities of the Kabuki, but having kind of a fixed bearing where the bar can just straight bend up and down like a Texas does, but just with further, that's kind of like the ideal world for everyone.
Absolutely. With all of their bars, squat bar, bench bar, like deadlift bar, all of it. If that was fixed, they'd be the best bars in the market, in my opinion.
Right.
I think on them are absolutely fantastic. The knurling on them is aggressive, and I love it. Like I have no other complaints. It just makes everything unreliable because no other powerlifting bar moves like that. So you have to have a Kabuki bar to train with in order to know what to expect on meet day.
Right. And you can try as much as you want to perfect and learn around it, but something like that just mechanically like puts you in a non-advantageous position, although it has other advantages in it. It's like you're fighting, a con to get a pro, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't really deadlift ever, and I don't deadlift enough to know, and I've never used one. So I just like hearing people's opinions, because me being someone who runs high level meets, it's like the Texas is tried and true. And there's some people that they've perfected it, or those imperfections don't affect them. So it's like, they're only going to go somewhere where there's a Kabuki deadlift bar. Right. But it's like, ideally you want to be able to listen and kind of see what everyone wants. Right.
Yeah, but I mean, me being wide stance, I'm a smaller dude. Like I inherently am just gonna have a little less stability with these weights than somebody that's 250. Just that one thing alone, having more mass to stabilize, might be enough to mitigate that problem.
Right.
But it kind of just becomes exponential at like where I'm at, like how much it affects me.
For sure. All right, so let's jump into some questions that I have. I think we've gotten quite a good background on your history of powerlifting. So I want to get into some specific questions about like this entire journey of lifting. The first one, what would you say your current to date proudest achievement in powerlifting is, and what would you also say? So 2 questions I'll give to you at once. Is your biggest, most ambitious future goal?
What am I currently most proud of? Well, that's a tough one. When I think about it, honestly, the Kern, the Kern is the first thing that pops into my mind. Like, that was the first meet that I committed to going 181. Like, obviously, I competed as a 181 at the showdown the previous year, but I had planned on being a 165 and just decided halfway through the cut that it just wasn't going to happen. I knew my time was coming close, but yeah. So I went into the Kern knowing this would be my first, like, mentally committed, and then, end up setting an all-time world record total. So that was, I was really proud of that. And then ambitious, I want to beat John.
Fuck.
And I'm not just on the platform. I want to beat the dots. I want to be number 1 on open powerlifting.
Hell yeah.
And
So,
doing them.
Statistically, obviously, you've gone through a lot of different scenarios on what that would take, right?
Yeah. So 2150 at 181 is what I would need to beat his best ever dots. And what's funny is if I go up a weight class and weigh in as a light 190, the total I need only goes up 50 pounds.
Okay.
So if I weigh in at 190 and total 1,000 kilos, I'll break his dots. Won't break his total at 198, but I'll break his dots.
Right. Ooh,
so
okay. So let's get a little bit more specific now. Is your next competition the American Pro?
It is.
Do you have any specific goals that you feel comfortable vocalizing, whether it's one or some of them for that meet?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. I haven't really made any official decision. Well, in my mind, it's official. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. I think I've only got about one more good cut left to 181. And so I think I'm going to do that at the American Pro. And I think I'm actually going to switch from wraps to raw.
Oh, showdown, baby.
Because, in wraps, it's like, okay, I have a better shot at money. Like, it's nothing's a guarantee at this level. Absolutely guarantee. But the odds are in my favor if I put up a total in reps.
Right.
I really wanted to hit 1,000 kilos at 181. But my weight class is no longer like my identity. At this point, I just want to get bigger and stronger, and just continue to be competitive as best I can. So with that mindset, and the way training has been going, I think I'm going to switch raw, and I'm going to make that swing for John in October.
Nice. And you'll also be able to have the head-to-head with Jawan. So
yeah,
that's going to be cool. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it will be.
If you guys don't know, I coach Jawan Garrison. Jawan is aiming for, our goal is to beat Blake's all-time world record total in sleeves at that meet. Also to break his own all-time world record squat, and to break, I know you'll be then gunning for it also, the all-time world record bench. So that will be a lot of fun, friendly head-to-head. That'll be really cool. Besides in an individual weight class all-time world record, but then you also have that further goal. So that's cool. Hell yeah.
Well, those are the meets I typically do the best at as well. When I have competition, friendly competition's better. Jawan and I have always been chummy since the first time we met each other. It was funny. He beat me at the first showdown that I didn't plan on being a 181, but I think he beat me by like 100 pounds on the total at that meet. But yeah, no, I having John and Jawan there both to push me, I think will actually increase my odds of doing well. I always do.
That's going to be fun. I'm super excited. That's ultimately what everyone right now is gunning for. The American Pro is going to be amazing. I think it's super exciting. I love that you said it here. Switching over to sleeves and going to make a run for some big goals. Big goals.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Another question. looking over all these years that we just did, I think you answered half of it. The question is, what would you say your best and worst competition over the years is? Would you agree that your best that you feel might have been that Kern, that first Kern?
You know, my best, well, in my mind, I have two competitions that were probably my best overall. I wouldn't say the Kern was my best. It was just probably my favorite. On paper, my best ever meet was the year I got next to last at state in high school. That's the only meet I've ever gone 9 for 9 at. I had the best day of my life and got second to last.
Fuck it. That does not count as best, bro. Just because you went 9 for 9. Come on now.
But most recently, it would probably have to be the hybrid. I made the best of a terrible training cycle, and I squatted 30 pounds under what I was capable of, but I got my first 500-pound bench, and then also snagged the all-time world record deadlift and total at that meet.
That was when you first broke it in sleeves, right?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah. Yep.
So that would probably have to be like my best in recent years. And then worst, well, I've bombed like 4, sorry, got a phone call. Honestly, my worst would probably have to be that collegiate nationals that I bombed out of. Like, it could not have gone worse. Like, I barely got the bar off my chest. Like, there was no hope.
And that was the one that you referenced because it was this crazy cut and your gear just didn't do jack shit, huh?
Yeah, and while it's like that cut wasn't a problem, it wasn't hard for me to make that cut. But just the way equipment works, there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad it happened because it was a really good experience. It really humbled me, and it made me take everything a little bit more seriously throughout the course of a year, not just the 8 weeks before meet. So that really helped. I think that I actually switched to sumo more or less because of that meet, and so put a lot on my total because of that, obviously. So yeah, I think it'd have to be worst would be that one, and then best would be the hybrid.
Nice. I like it. So last question, without us diving too deep into it, because I know both of us can go very, very deep in regards to being a business owner, being a gym owner, the thing that everyone wants, but the thing that everyone also suggests maybe don't do it till you really analyze. Kind of take me through the process of you and your wife opening the gym, and ultimately tell me any advice that you may have, because I'm sure just as I do, you have a lot of people asking for advice on opening a gym or whatever. What would be your advice to anyone looking to turn powerlifting into career as the two of us have and open a gym?
Well, opening a gym is actually something I've always wanted to do. Like, since I got into lifting, I mean, within a year or two of lifting, I knew I wanted to be a trainer or a coach of some kind. And then not long after that, I'm like, I want to make this my profession, and own a gym and just be in charge of the whole situation. So, I mean, I've had that goal in mind since I was 16, more or less. So I went to college, got the education, got the connections, met my wife, Shelby, and she actually wanted to go to physical therapy school. So us talking about that, like gym, PT clinic all in one, it just kind of worked out. She didn't actually end up going to PT school. She went to something called muscle activation school, technique school. So similar physical therapy modality. And so we just combined our two businesses. And as far as advice, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I don't feel like the gym can't be your primary business or primary source of income. I mean, every now and then you hit, a really good location where the demographic just desperately needs it. I mean, I feel like your gym is very successful on that front. But we do have a little bit of other competition as far as powerlifting here. So it's not as, it was needed, but not maybe not quite as much as other places.
Which surprisingly, not to cut you off, it's like Miami. You'd think Miami'd be another hub. No, there's nothing. There's me, there's Hybrid. Hybrid was the first powerlifting gym. I had been in the sport of powerlifting already for 4 years. And when they decided they were going to open a gym, I'm like, finally, we have a gym in Miami. So it's just weird how that works, you know?
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Agreed. That don't
Yeah.
you can't let that be your bread and butter or your only roll of the dice, right?
Yeah, I mean, with our business model, our goal was to have memberships cover overhead. If memberships cover overhead, then Shelby and I get 100% of our take home.
Right.
Because if I'm working at another gym, I have to pay rent. If Shelby's working out of a studio, she has to pay rent. So there's just money coming out of our pocket that really doesn't need to be. And then also, it essentially allowed me to be a part-time professional powerlifter, you know, because there is now money on the line, and I can, you know, take a step back from work a little bit, focus on my training a little bit more. And I have a better shot at winning the money to supplement kind of what I'm not making throughout the year.
Right.
So that was also,
and then also add into the mix, you guys also run meets, you guys also run events as well, right?
yes. I mean, obviously that was fairly recent. I mean, we directed our first competition out of our gym last December. Not that it was the first meet we'd ever directed. Like we hosted a 5-platform high school meet when we were running the A&M powerlifting team. And we even hosted the first 1,000 lifter collegiate nationals in 2018, I think. Yeah, it was 2018 because it was my first year not competing in collegiates. So we had a lot of experience doing that, but it was our first time doing it just Shelby and I, not affiliated with another organization other than obviously WRPF.
Right. And so again, although you've only ran one, future plans. And again, it's having a facility where you can have other sources of income passing through it besides just members paying you money. And especially if you're going to go into a niche like powerlifting, that's where I differentiated myself, where I planted my gym. I'm in a pretty high-end area. And although I'm a powerlifter's paradise, I have over 30 bodybuilding machines now at this point as well. Cardio pieces, Stairmasters, everything. So I'm able to market to everyone. Where people make a mistake is they're a power lifter and they're like, I want to open a powerlifting gym so me and all my powerlifting friends who are in high school who are broke can train. You know what I mean? So there's so many different things to analyze, but what you said, you hit the nail on the head, where it's like you can't rely on that to be your primary source of revenue, and you need to have other revenue streams to supplement it, whether it's how you independently run your current, you know, your business as a personal trainer, your wife as her PT style of work that she does with her clientele, instead of having to pay someone else, because I have trainers who pay me. I have a PT who rents space in my gym. So instead of having to pay that person, you keep 100% of your income. You also have a facility, which you can have that starting goal, but then as you manipulate, as things change, you find ways to make it more profitable. You have all those other events and stuff, but it takes a lot of starting capital and it takes a lot of focus. And it also is extremely helpful that you guys are a team. You're not doing it independently, and you guys both have those kind of things that can help feed it.
Yeah, I mean, and also like our families are great resources as well. I mean, we've definitely, I don't want to say luck, like we've definitely worked really hard, but we have had some help. I mean, Shelby's parents, they own their own business and have for a long time. They own their own development company, so they've been an invaluable resource in this. So, you know, also don't ever be scared to ask for help. It's okay. You don't have to do it on your own.
Right.
You know, people.
Also, I know something that you mentioned to me when I remember we talked, when you were telling me about it, you were showing me, I was like, dude, hell yeah, this is super sick. You were also in a prime space or prime time where there was a lot of money and a lot of cheap money. You were able to get an SBA loan, which I also got an SBA loan, but to purchase my property. You know, so don't be afraid to use. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to understand debt isn't always a bad thing, as long as it's calculated and all laid out how it's going to be done, and as long as the terms are good, you know. So you're able to also get a loan to help facilitate some of that overhead, because opening a gym isn't a very, very expensive starting point. And you don't necessarily want to go. You might have the money in your bank account, but you don't want to go blow your entire lifetime savings and any money to help cushion the first couple of months of a business.
Yeah, I mean, we took out 6 months working capital so that we knew no matter what, if we got 0 members in the first 6 months, we're still covered no matter what. And because of the memberships we did get, that 6 months working capital actually was able to sustain us for the first 13, 14 months.
Right.
So definitely worked out doing that. Ask for more than what you need, and hopefully they'll meet you in the middle.
Exactly. Hell yeah, man. Well, Blake, this was awesome. So many other things that I want to talk to you about. We'll definitely have you back another time. This is super enjoyable. Thank you so much for joining us. Give me a little bit of information. Tell everyone where they can find you on social media. We already know they're going to find you at the American Pro, winning some money. And yeah.
Yeah, look me up, deadlifting orangutan. Really hard to miss, to stand out like a sore thumb. Don't tell Ed Cohn. He got mad when I called myself the orangutan. He said, "No, I'm the orangutan." And
were you deadlifting high 800s at this point? Because now he'll probably take the hat off.
No, I said it at the Olympia after I pulled 915.
Damn, come on, Cone. That's funny, man. And then your gym, where can they find that whenever they're in San Antonio?
281 in Brook Hollow in San Antonio, Texas.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Blake. I hope everyone you enjoyed episode 6, this week's episode of the WRPF podcast.